My name is Darla Berger, and I'm a community sports specialist for the state for Department of Health and Human Services. And what that means basically is I'm a liaison between our system, the agencies like you guys, and then the clients that we both serve. So what I tell people is use our system as designed, but when that's not working, when you have somebody who's fallen through the cracks, somebody who's telling you, I don't qualify and it doesn't make sense to you, then reach out to me and we'll see what we can do. I'm actually out of our Sarpy County office, but I do cover Douglas, Sarpy, all the way around this corner of the state to York. So I'm in your service area. And so reach out to me. And in the packet, I think on the last page is actually my contact information. And some of you I know because I do try to get to meetings in Lincoln as often as I can. So anyway, thank you for being here today. A couple of things on here. So this is just kind of the governor's priorities and some of the things that they value. And the next one talks about the accomplishments. And if you're looking at that on your PowerPoint, you probably need like super powered bifocals to see that. So it kind of talks about some of the things that we've accomplished in the last few years, and then talks about some of the things that we're looking forward to and some of the priorities that are coming up. And a lot of these are shared in the business plan, which is on the website. So if you're interested in the direction that we're taking, you can always see that on the website as well. We are 5 divisions, and Drew talked to you from Medicaid and long-term care, but we're public health, developmental disabilities, children and family services, which is my division, and then behavioral health as well. We used to have Veterans Affairs in there, and the legislature pulled that out a couple of years ago. So now we're 5 divisions. But we are big. Public health obviously takes care of everything. I always tell people we take you from birth to death, literally. Your birth certificate is registered with us, and your death certificate is registered with us, and everything in between, your license, professional license, your hair salon, your water quality, all of those things are actually done through the Department of Health and Human Services. So we have lots of aspects of our agency. I'm going to talk to you about more economic assistance and the financial parts of this. So there are about 24 programs that provide assistance for low-income families. And I'm going to look at these in general terms first, and then I'll break these down specifically by program. So if you have any questions, let me know. A lot of these programs you're probably pretty familiar with. Some of them maybe more than others. And again, I'm going to look at each of these in a little bit more in depth as we go through this. Drew's already covered the Medicaid, so I won't be covering that part for you. When we look at programs, there's some basic guidelines that we look at. So citizenship and what we call qualified alien status is one of those. We always have to look at residency in Nebraska. We look at intent to make Nebraska their home. So that usually only comes up if somebody's here for medical treatment. So like in Omaha, where we have some pretty high quality medical care through UNMC, the transplant units and some of those things, sometimes we have people come to Omaha just specifically for that treatment. If their intent is not to live in Nebraska, they may be denied Nebraska Medicaid or Nebraska Public Assistance because their home residence is actually their home. So otherwise, we look at intent. That's kind of the key word for us on residency. Where do you intend to make your home? We need identification, we need social security numbers, and then depending upon the program, we look at income and resources. And so I'm going to look specifically at each program. SNAP is a program that most people are familiar with. It's used to buy food items. It is run by the Department of USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. A lot of people don't realize that. It is the only program that we run that is administered out of USDA. All of our other programs federally come from Health and Human Services. So we have a couple of federal crossovers there. And this program, when we look at the benefit amount, we look at who's in the household, who purchases and prepares their food together. There is a work requirement. So if somebody's not exempt, they need to be working or volunteering to maintain those benefits. We look at student status, and that's for students of higher education. And then you'll see felon status on there. And there's been a recent change to the felon status. Most of you are familiar with the drug felon status. So if they had 3 charges of possession, then it's kind of 3 strikes, you're out, or if it's for sale or distribution, they were permanently disqualified. But recently there was a change to that, and if they're a sexual predator, charged with a felony on that and convicted, murder, a couple of others, sex trafficking, then they're also now disqualified. So that's a recent change to that. So that is a new felony status. The other programs still just look at drug felony status, but that one looks at a little bit broader felony status. A lot of people will ask about the food stamp allotment. Food stamps are based upon three things: the number of people in the household, the amount of income that they have, and then the amount of allowable disregards, which is things like rent or mortgage, utilities, child support if they're court ordered to pay child support. So if any of those three factors change, the amount of allotment could change, okay? The federal government also usually updates that each September for October 1. So a lot of times people will see their benefit go up by a few dollars in October, and sometimes people question that. It's usually because there's a federal increase. I've not seen that increase for this year yet, but it usually comes in sometime in September for October. Okay. TANF for ADC, we kind of interchangeably use that term in Nebraska, is benefits for children, for dependent children. And one of the things I want to point out in there is it says that they're living with the parents / or relatives that they're living with. So one of the key things, we know that there are about 10,000 children in Nebraska living with other relatives, but we know that there's only 100 of those families getting ADC for those kids. So there's a big gap. A lot of people, I think, have taken on relatives. Maybe they're taking care of their niece's kids or their grandchildren or somebody else, but they don't realize that they can get an ADC payment for those children. So there's actually been a federal grant that we're a part of. It's a 5-year grant called Families First. It's a family preservation grant, and I'm working on parts of that, and one of those parts is kinship. And so you'll be seeing more about that. There's actually going to be a Kinship Navigator program in Lincoln, will be a pilot site. But please, if you encounter somebody who's saying, I'm taking care of my niece's kids or my grandkids or some other relative or even another child, please have them reach out to us, because there are some benefits to help them through that. So obviously most people are familiar with, if I'm a parent and I'm a single parent, or I'm two parents but somebody's disabled or not able to work, they apply for ADC and economically qualify. But again, there's that second part of that has to do with relatives or kinship cases. And again, there's some program guidelines. They must cooperate with Employment First, was our work program. And there's that relative responsibility, and then you see the drug felon status at the bottom of that as well. So that's the ADC TANF program. We also have a program that we call AABD, which is the Aged, Blind, and Disabled. Drew probably talked about a Medicaid component of that. We also have a grant component of that. So this is for our populations who are elderly, blind, or disabled. And we look at their disability based upon Social Security makes that determination. And in this case, and we look at who's in the household, what their income is, and if there's a gap, then we can issue a grant to help them out a little bit. So where this applies at most often is if, let's say, somebody is in assisted living and maybe their income is only $800 a month, but the assisted living facility is $1,500 a month, there's going to be a gap in what they need to live in that facility. That's when this grant can come in and help meet that gap and keep them in the facility to which they're appropriate to be living. Okay? So there's a Medicaid component of that and a grant component. Energy assistance, a familiar program for a lot of you. Cooling assistance is a more restricted population. That program runs in June, July, and August. So it ended the end of August, and that's for households where somebody's 70 or older, where there were children age 6 or under on ADC, or there's a medical condition like asthma or COPD where they require cooling assistance. And in that program, we help offset those costs by applying a stipend to their utility provider, usually their electric provider. We also have a heating component of that, which is more general population. Basically, you have to qualify economically for that. That program started October 1st. So we're a week into that program for this season. And again, this stipend is applied to who their heating source is. So depending upon who that provider is, it can even be propane or wood if that's what the person's source is. We'd apply it to that provider. We also can look at help with repairs on air conditioners or furnaces, if that's the case, if they own the home. And this program just started. People, if they've gotten this in the past, or if they're on any SNAP or any public assistance program, should not have to apply for heating assistance. We automatically run those budgets. If they don't hear from us, then they should contact us, but otherwise that program is pretty automatic. If you've gotten it in the past, or if you got cooling assistance in the summer, we have your income verified. We can automatically run that budget. And we will make the guarantees to the providers, but we actually don't send the check until the federal government pays us, which is usually sometime in November. But families will start seeing that as a credit on their heating source on their utility bill. One of my favorite programs, and probably one of the most underutilized programs we have, is Social Services for Aged and Disabled. This is a supportive services program. Probably the key thing you need to know about that is in bold at the bottom of that page. This service is intended to keep people in the living arrangement to which they're most comfortable. And so if somebody is elderly, blind, or disabled, and they want to be in their own home, we can bring a lot of supportive services into the home to keep them safe and to keep them living in healthy conditions. So, for instance, we can bring in home health care, which is minimal. If it gets really medically involved, it becomes a Medicaid paid program, but it can be light housekeeping, it can be meal preparation, grocery shopping, laundry services. So those services can come in, and we can provide a lot of services through this program for a lot less money than if they were in assisted living or a nursing home. So if you have a family saying, we're really struggling, we're trying to meet mom or dad's needs, and therefore I'm missing work, or the kids are missing school, or whatever, they should be reaching out to us on this program, because this is a good supportive services to help keep somebody safe and in their home. I'm sorry? No, Medicaid has a different component. The question was, do they have to be on Medicaid? So Medicaid has a different component of that, which is more medically involved. In the SSAD program, it is not medical, so it's more things like housekeeping, meal preparation, light. I think they can help with bathing, but beyond that, if it's more medically involved, it goes to a Medicaid side of that. And we coordinate those internally. So if somebody, let's say somebody starts off just needing the SSAD program, they need light housekeeping and they just need a little bit of help, maybe shampooing because they can't reach their hair to shampoo, and then their health declines and they are more medically involved, then we would probably shut down our program and Medicaid would pick up and make it one of their programs and make it more medical involvement. Good question. Childcare subsidy, again, a very common program. This program, again, can help families that have children who are in need of child care. It is income-based, and there's a couple of scales on that. The lowest one is that if your income is so low, you can qualify for this without paying any portion of your child care costs. If your income goes up or you have higher income, you could have to pay a portion or a sliding fee on that each month, and that is based upon the number of children in the household. They pick the provider they want to use. We do not assign a provider to them. We have a whole litany of licensed and certified providers that they can choose from, but they do pick the provider that they want to use. And this is used if somebody's working, looking for work, is employed, going to school, and it can be for a two-parent household also, but the two-parent household, both parents need to be doing something, looking for work, going to school, doing training, something like that. And this is income-based. So again, there's about 4 different standards of income on this. There's one of them, you may remember about 2 years ago, the legislature looked at what we called the cliff effect. I don't know if anything that rings a bell to any of you. And basically what it was saying is that people who would qualify for child care and then got an increase in hours or increased pay at their job, and then they were falling off child care, so employers came to the legislature saying now people are not wanting the extra hours or don't want to take the raise because it impacts their child care. We have a provision in place for cliff effects. So if they're on child care subsidy and their income goes up, there's more of a staggered, kind of a ladder process for that to help them make that transition. Emergency assistance is one of the other programs that a lot of people are not familiar with. This comes out of ADC funding. That's important because dependent children need to be in the household in order to qualify for this program. So in this program, they can qualify once in a 12-month period, And you'll see at the bottom of that page there, payments can be made for a variety of things. What happens in this situation is if a family's been doing okay, and then like let's say the mother gets ill and misses work, and now all of a sudden she can't pay her rent this month, but she'll be back on track next month, that would be an emergency. We could step in and give them a stipend to help them meet their expenses for this month. The key thing to that is we look at sustainability, okay? So if they can't sustain that, maybe their rent is too high every month, we're not going to step in because it's not a sustainable program. But if there's been an emergency or they need help with one of these things like moving costs or transportation costs or deposit on a new place because the old place was closed down, this is a time that we can step in and do that. Couple of key things on this. I think sometimes when clients call in and ask about this, they don't indicate the word emergency, and so they just say, I need help with, and then it's so vague, our workers don't necessarily know what they're asking for. And I think sometimes, honestly, our workers don't ask enough questions to get there. So if you have somebody who's in an emergency and you're reaching out on this program, make sure that they use the term emergency assistance. And again, keep in mind, we look at sustainability. Can they sustain this after that month? But we can pay up to $500 in a 12-month period on that. And again, there's a list of a variety of things that we can help with on that. Drew talked about Medicaid, so I'm going to go over that pretty fast. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about AccessNebraska. I don't think Drew talked about that, right? A little bit? Okay. So a lot of you are probably helping people with AccessNebraska. And again, in Nebraska, we use the customer service centers, which there are 4 of. We have our local offices, and for economic assistance, we have about 150 staff in local offices across the state. And then we have community partners. So some of you are probably community partners with us on our website. There's a list of community partners, and we have almost 1,000 community partners statewide. And those are agencies who have committed to help families access our benefits whenever necessary. And again, part of my job is to make sure that we're working with those community partners on services. Part of AccessNebraska was to increase accessibility. AccessNebraska itself is about 10 years old, so if you've been around for a while, you know we had a rough start, and we were in the news a lot, but that has thankfully smoothed out a little bit. But we didn't take away any services, we added services with AccessNebraska. So we still have paper applications, we still have local offices, we've added web-based services and phone applications. I don't know if most of you know that, but people can call in for either economic assistance or Medicaid and do their application online or by phone. So if they don't have access to a computer or they don't want to use the computer to apply, they can call in, do the application and the interview in one telephone interview. And for economic assistance, we do about 5,000 of those in a month. I'm not sure what Medicaid's number is, but economic assistance is about 5,000 a month. The customer service center is open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So because we cross into a different time zone in western Nebraska, that is available. They can do interviews, answer questions. They are state employees. They can answer any questions you have. They can look at your benefits. They can see if verifications have been received. Economic assistance and Medicaid share documents, so those documents are scanned in. So if I send in pay stubs for one program, the other programs should be able to see that as well. They're all scanned into the same place, into that master case. And again, we have local offices. Those are available for answer any questions, drop off information. People can come and use our computer kiosks. They can use our telephones. They can use our scanners or our printers, anything that they need to submit those benefits or to get their application processed. With economic assistance, an interview is usually required. So what will happen once an application is submitted is that we'll reach out to you. We try to text if they've given us permission to text them. We'll reach out by phone if we have that access. If we don't have that, we'll send a letter and tell them to call us. But we do try to reach out right away whenever we can. About a third of our applications for SNAP are processed the same day the application's received. About a third of them are same day. We have the voice response unit, which is available 24/7 to tell you what your status is on your case. And then again, a little bit about Access Nebraska. I want to point out a couple things on this screen. In the upper right-hand side, it has a list of our programs. And I actually brought some program brochures, so if you need any of those, come up to me. I brought some with me. But if you are like, oh, I don't remember what Drew or Darla said about a certain program, you can go to the website and go into DHHS programs, and it will lay all those programs out for you with the description. We also have printable forms, so if a client says, I need an employment verification, but I didn't get mine, you can go in there and print that, or print applications if you want. We have a list of our community partners I told you about, and then there's some ways to contact us. On the lower icons, My Account is a great tool. If you have somebody who is going to be very savvy, tech savvy, and using their system, if they set up My Account, they can go in and see what verifications we received. They can print a benefit history. So like this time of the year, a lot of schools need a benefit history for free and reduced lunches. And they're like, I don't want to hold online. If they have an account set up, they can go in and print all that information for themselves. They can maintain their whole case. They can see their history. They can see what information we have. We obviously have the applications for economic assistance, for developmental disabilities, and for Medicaid. And then on the lower part of that, we have a Do I Qualify? So sometimes people are hesitant to fill out all the paperwork if they think they won't qualify. This is a nice tool. You can go in and put some basic information in about your household and your household income. It will tell you what program you may qualify for, and then can take you right into the application process. Submit documents is one of my favorites. We scan in almost 1 million, but it's about 850,000 pages of documents per month. So when people say, well, I faxed it in, that's probably not your best tool, to be honest with you, because if the fax machine jams up or it runs out of paper, we don't know that. I always recommend to people submit documents through the AccessNebraska. If you save it as a PDF file, you just attach it. You attach it right away to the household, and you'll get a message saying we received the document, and then you'll get a message telling you that it's been tied to that case. So you'll know right away that it's tied, and it's usually within 24 hours it's tied to that case. So this is how I recommend you submit any applications or documents. But again, sometimes people don't have that access, but this is a great way to submit any documents. The same thing is you can report changes here. So if you have somebody who's moved or they're switching childcare, you know, they can go right into report changes, tell us what the new change is, and then we get that information right away. And then the worker can act on that. And there's about 16 different things that you can report there. Change of address, baby born, change in income, change in childcare. There's a wide variety. And then there's an open text on those. So that's a good way to update us on changes as well. If you help people apply for benefits, you can actually set up an account for yourself. So if you've helped somebody apply, you know, it asks you, it sets up the security, the 3 security questions and the name and the password, and it seems kind of cumbersome, and sometimes you might be helping somebody who's not ever going to use that again, and you think, well, we just put all of that in for just one application. I do a lot of work, a lot of outreach work, and when I do that, I actually have an account set up for myself, so I can go in and put applications in for people. Now the difference in here is it's going to ask, do you want to activate this with a PIN number? And for you and I, because we're probably not in the system, you're going to say no, okay? And then you can actually have an account and help people apply. So when I do a lot of especially homeless outreach or benefits where people are not going to come back into that system very often, I just set up an account, and that's how I help people load information or get those documents and applications in. So that's something that you can do for yourself as well. Sure. So you'll get a question, kind of starts here. You'll set up your own user ID, and you'll set up a password for that user ID. So in my case, like maybe it's a D Burger and then whatever my password is. And I can create those for myself. And then you go ahead and you'll create a new account. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll do user account. It'll ask you for that. It'll ask you 3 security questions in case you get locked out. And then the final question will say, do you want to activate this with a PIN number? And just say no. If you're going to just keep this to help your clients, just say no to that. Now, if you are on benefits, you can say yes to that and get a PIN number, and then that's how you can get into my account. So there's kind of 2 levels of security. One, if you're on benefits and you can go into my account. one like for me where I'm just helping people apply, then I would say no to the PIN number. Does that make sense? And when I say no to the PIN number, then every time I want to come in and help somebody submit an application, I just put in my username and my password, and I'll get right into that application. I won't have to go through that loading of security questions or any of that.
Okay.
Okay?
And then, I don't know if this is new, but the past, I don't know, week or so, when I uploaded applications, it wouldn't let me submit documents right away.
Were they new applications? Were they applications that weren't known to our system?
Right.
Then we have to have a case, a master case to tie that to. So, and we usually tie those within about 24 to 36 hours, because when you go in to submit the documents, you're tying them right to a master case, and if that master case hasn't been set up yet, then it can't tie that. So you have to give us time to get that new application. If they're brand new to our system, get that new application in and get that, and then you can submit the document because it can tie it then.
Is there a way to submit those documents when you're submitting the application? Because a lot of times these people just come in at one time.
Right.
And
You, well, I usually, do you save them as a PDF file or a JPEGs file? Is that what you're doing? You're scanning them? Yeah. You know, we can't, you couldn't tie it electronically to the case. You could fax it in and hope, but it's going to be a matter, when it's happening, if you have a brand new case that's not known to our system, when you're submitting those documents, we have to have a case to tie that to. And so we really kind of need to wait till that case has been, you know, opened up for us, or not opened, but pinned for us, and then you can tie it. So I probably would, if it was me, I'd probably just hold on and then a day later submit those documents and you should be okay. Yeah, sorry, but when it's a brand new case, like I said, we've got to have something to tie it to, so. All right, any other questions? For the relative payee, the question was, do you have to have legal custody? You have to be a relative, and we have to be able to prove that bloodline. So if I'm taking care of my grandkids, I have to have the birth certificates that connect us. And then if I'm not a relative, then you have to have legal care, custody of that. So, yes.
Actually, my question too, but I have another question under 5 week. If it's another medical condition, do they just need a doctor's note?
Correct. So for cooling assistance, the question is, it said medical conditions, and there's a variety of those, but they'd have to have a doctor's statement. It's just a 2-page form. And once, if it's a permanent condition, like something that's not going to go away, like COPD, then they don't have to re-verify the next summer, okay?
There's an already established form that they would need their doctor to complete, or?
Yeah, we have the forms, and they're probably in the printable forms. There's 2 medical forms on that. And again, we need it for cooling, not for heating, but for cooling assistance, because medical condition is the #1 reason why most people are getting cooling assistance. And once we have that, if it's not a condition that will change, they don't have to re-verify the next summer, okay? Other questions? Yes?
Can you explain a little bit about the community partners and information sharing?
Okay, like confidential, release of confidential information, that?
Aging Partners, we're a community partner with the state, and I'd say at least 9 out of 10 workers that I call, whether it's EA or Medicaid, they have no idea what that means, or I have to wait on hold for like 5, 6, 7 minutes while they talk to a supervisor to verify that we are. I don't think they know what that means.
What that means. So the question is about community partners, because we contract with some agencies to be a community partner with us to provide outreach and other services. And then when you're trying to help your customers and you call into AccessNebraska or call a worker, then there's a question about releasing that information or being able to talk to the worker, correct? So I always tell the agencies that I work with, we obviously have to protect our clients' confidential information. We have a release of confidential information. I have some paper copies with me. I always recommend to my agencies that I work with that when they're filling out, helping somebody fill out the application, that they just have the client sign that release and submit it with all their other documents. That way, if you have to call in for that family later on, you've already got that release of confidential information is on file with us, and then the worker can see that and know that it's okay to talk to you. Obviously, like everybody else, we need to protect our clients' rights to that confidential information, so we need to have that release even if you're a community partner. So like I work a lot with, obviously, the food bank, but I work with community response. Some of you are familiar with that program. And even when I'm sitting at the table and we're talking about a family, I need to have the DHHS release to talk about that family because we need to protect their rights. So I just recommend, and I have some paper copies of it, but I recommend you just get that release of confidential information signed and submit it with all the other documents. That way you have it on file, and then if you need to call in, you don't have to hassle with that quite as much. Good question. Any others?
Is that released within the application?
It is not. There has to be a separate release, and I do have some paper ones with me, or you can get it, I think, from printable forms as well. Okay. All right, and again, my contact information is there. So if you have any questions, like I said, please use the system as designed. I know that it can be overwhelming sometimes and frustrating when you think that you have a relationship. But again, if you're having any issues with that, you need more information, or you're having problems with the family, just reach out to me if there's any other questions. Thank you.